At 11:47 p.m. on March 14, 1945, Corporal Vincent Russo crouched in a drainage ditch 200 yards from Stalag 7A's eastern perimeter fence, clutching a weapon no Allied soldier had ever carried into combat. The compound held 127 American airmen scheduled for execution at dawn, less than 7 hours away. German intelligence had discovered their planned uprising. In the next 90 minutes, Russo would use a homemade incendiary POW to eliminate 9 guards, breach 2 fences, and lead the largest prisoner escape of the European theater. His success would come from a skill learned in his father's Pittsburgh forge, a weapon mocked by every officer who saw it, and a willingness to bet his life on physics most men didn't understand. The guards patrolling Stalag 7A's kill zone had no reason to watch the drainage ditch. They'd swept it twice that evening. Their searchlights cut patterns across frozen Bavarian mud, illuminating wire, guard towers, and the 40-foot death strip between perimeters. Inside the compound, 127 men waited in Barracks 9, knowing the SS execution squad would arrive with morning light. None of them knew Corporal Vincent Russo was 200 yards away, testing the draw weight on a weapon that shouldn't exist. Vincent Russo grew up in Pittsburgh's Lawrenceville neighborhood, where his father operated a small metalwork shop on Butler Street. From age 12, Vincent worked the forge after school, learning to judge steel temperature by color, to shape metal with hammer precision, to understand how heat changed everything it touched. His father specialized in custom tools, items other shops couldn't or wouldn't make. "Someone needs it, we figure out how to build it," the old man would say, wiping soot from his forearms. Vincent learned that creativity mattered more than convention, that the right tool for an impossible job might not exist yet. He enlisted in January 1943, insisting on infantry over a mechanic's post. Combat in southern France taught him what the manual never could, that officers who demanded strict doctrine got men killed, while sergeants who encouraged improvisation kept their squads alive. By March 1945, his platoon overran a German communications post near Moosburg and found the execution list for Stalag 7A. The third name stopped his breathing. Technical Sergeant Peter Caruso, ball turret gunner, Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, a boyhood friend from 4 blocks away. Division refused authorization for a rescue. 12 miles might as well have been 1,000. But Vincent raised his hand and proposed something no officer in the room could immediately dismiss. Not an assault, but an infiltration. 1 man, silent kills, a fence breach, and an extraction before the sun came up. Captain Walsh listened to every objection from his staff and then to Vincent's answer. A bow built from truck leaf springs, strung with aircraft cable, firing bolts tipped with thermite and white phosphorus scavenged from grenades. A weapon that killed through fire instead of noise. "That's insane," Walsh said. "Yes, sir," Vincent replied. "But it works." He was given 6 hours in an abandoned Moosburg forge. He shaped the limbs from leaf spring steel, quenched them for tension, carved the riser from oak, and built 9 bolts from curtain rods packed with molten down thermite and phosphorus, primed to ignite on impact. He tested it on sandbags at 60 yards. The bolts punched through 3 layers and kept burning. By 2,100 hours the weapon was finished, and by 2,147 he shook Captain Walsh's hand and walked into the dark, 42 pounds of gear on his back, moving east toward Stalag 7A. The first 2 miles crossed open farmland, frozen ground crunching under his boots. By 2,234 he reached the tree line, 300 yards out, and studied the camp. 3 fences, 9 towers, searchlights, paired patrols on 90-minute rotations. Intelligence had been accurate. He worked into the drainage ditch and began the crawl, 3 inches of freezing water soaking through his uniform, 63 minutes of 5-yard advances and silent listening. At 2,344 he reached his firing position, a bend in the ditch with a clear line on 3 eastern towers. 16 minutes until the shift change window that would drop coverage by 40%. At 0001 hours he loosed the first bolt. It struck the guard in Tower 3 through the chest, and the phosphorus ignited before the man could scream. His vocal cords were gone before his knees buckled. The platform began to smolder beneath his body. 4 seconds later, Tower 5's guard turned toward the smoke and took the second bolt in the side, flames consuming his uniform as he fell. The third shot, at 81 yards, the edge of reliable range, caught the Tower 7 guard low in the abdomen. He grabbed the burning shaft with his bare hands, the phosphorus climbing his arms to his face, and toppled from the platform, dead before he hit the ground. 3 towers down. Vincent moved 30 yards along the ditch to a new firing angle, checking his watch. 9 hours. New guards would reach the remaining towers in 8 minutes. He needed to work faster. He drew on Tower 1 at 68 yards. The guard was mid-yawn, rifle slung, watching nothing in particular. The bolt took him under the collarbone, and he folded without a sound, the fire doing in 3 seconds what a bullet's report would have undone in half a second by alerting the whole line. Tower 2 came next, 72 yards, a guard stamping his feet against the cold. Vincent led him slightly, accounting for the man's shifting weight, and the bolt caught him square in the chest as he turned. 5 towers silenced, 4 remained, and the shift change guards were already moving along the interior road toward their posts, torches bobbing in the dark. Vincent abandoned the ditch's safety and crab-walked along a shallow drainage offshoot to close the angle on Tower 4. The relief guard for that post was 30 yards from the ladder, close enough that a scream might reach him before the flame did. Vincent held his breath, drew, and released at maximum tension. The bolt crossed 55 yards in under a second, catching the outgoing guard between the shoulder blades as he began his climb down. He pitched forward off the ladder rung, dead in the fall, and the relief guard, hearing only a soft thud in the dark, assumed his partner had simply lost his footing on the ice. He hurried over to help, giving Vincent the 4 seconds he needed to notch bolt 7. The second guard died reaching down to touch what he thought was a fallen comrade, and the fire told him otherwise a moment too late. 6 towers eliminated, 3 left, and the clock read 0009. Vincent had 11 minutes before the window closed and patrol density returned to full strength. He moved to his final position, a slight rise in the ditch bank that gave him sightlines on towers 6, 8, and 9 simultaneously. Tower 6, a guard was lighting a cigarette, cupping the flame against the wind, and never saw the second flame that ended him 3 seconds later. Tower 8's a guard had grown suspicious. He was scanning the tree line with binoculars, sweeping slowly, methodically, the only man that night who seemed to sense something was wrong. Vincent waited until the binoculars passed him and swept toward the fence line before drawing. The bolt caught the guard mid-turn, and his body fell backward into the tower's small equipment shed, the fire spreading to canvas and wood within seconds. 1 tower remained, Tower 9, the northernmost post, 90 yards out, at the very edge of what the bow could reliably strike. Vincent's shoulders burned from 8 consecutive full draws. His hands had gone numb again in the cold. He flexed them, forced blood back into his fingers, and knocked his final bolt. The guard in Tower 9 was young, visibly nervous, glancing repeatedly toward the towers that had gone dark and quiet along the eastern line, sensing wrongness but unable to name it. Vincent held his aim 18 inches high to compensate for drop across 90 yards, exhaled, and released. The bolt arced through the dark and struck the young guard high in the chest. He never had time to shout. 9 towers, 9 kills, all of it done without a single gunshot, without a single alarm, in 19 minutes. Vincent moved fast now. He crossed the death strip in a low sprint, wire cutters already in hand, and began cutting through the outer fence. The wire parted in 8 cuts, each one deliberate, each one timed to the rhythm of the still sweeping searchlight beam. He slipped through, crossed the second kill zone, and cut through the middle fence in 6 more cuts. The inner fence, closest to the barracks, was lighter gauge, 4 cuts and he was through, standing inside Stalag 7A for the first time, alone, unarmed but for a suppressed pistol and an empty quiver. Barracks 9 sat 40 yards ahead, dark and silent. Vincent moved along the shadow line between buildings, past a guard shack he'd already confirmed was empty during the shift change confusion, and reached the barracks door at 0021 hours. He eased it open. 127 men lay in bunks, most awake, none sleeping on the night they expected to die. A staff sergeant near the door sat up sharply at the sound of the hinge, hand reaching for a weapon that wasn't there. "Easy," Vincent whispered. "American. I'm getting you out." The sergeant's eyes went to Vincent's uniform, his forge-scarred hands, the empty bow slung across his back, and he understood enough not to ask questions yet. Word moved through the barracks in whispers. Men rose from bunks in stocking feet, gathering what little they had. Near the back, Vincent found the man he'd come 12 miles for, Technical Sergeant Peter Caruso, thinner than Vincent remembered, a fading bruise along one cheekbone, staring at him like he was seeing a ghost from Lawrenceville rise up out of the Bavarian dark. "Vinny," Pete said, voice cracking. "It's really you." There was no time for the reunion either man wanted. Vincent gripped his shoulder once, hard, and said only, "Get them moving. Fence lines cut. We've got maybe 40 minutes before patrols reset." Pete nodded, swallowed whatever he'd been about to say, and turned to organize the men into a column. Moving 127 exhausted, malnourished airmen through 3 cut fences in silence proved harder than killing 9 guards. Vincent walked point, Pete walked the rear, and the column moved in short rushes between shadows, freezing every time the searchlights swept near. One man, weak from dysentery, stumbled and nearly cried out. 3 others caught him before he hit the ground. At the outer fence, the column bottlenecked. Each man had to duck through the same gap Vincent had cut, and the process ate precious minutes. At 01:04, with roughly 40 men still inside the wire, a new guard patrol rounded the northeast corner of the camp, 40 yards from the breach point, and Vincent watched in the dark as a flashlight beam began sweeping toward the gap in the fence. He had no bolts left. He drew the suppressed pistol Captain Walsh had given him for when everything went to hell, and it had. He moved low along the fence line, putting himself between the approaching patrol and the still exposed men, and waited until the lead guard was 15 feet away before firing twice. Both shots landed center mass, and the suppressor kept the reports to a dull cough lost under the wind. The second guard turned, and Vincent fired twice more before the man could raise his rifle. Both bodies went still in the frost. No alarm sounded. The last of the column slipped through the gap 90 seconds later. By 01:40 hours, all 127 men and Vincent Russo were moving west through the tree line toward the extraction point 3 miles distant, where Captain Walsh's truck waited on a countdown of its own. It would leave at 04:00 with or without them. The column moved faster now that they were clear of the wire, though many men were barely able to jog after months of starvation rations. Vincent and Pete took turns half-carrying the weakest among them. Behind them, Stalag 7A remained dark and silent, its 9 dead guards not yet discovered, its garrison still hours from realizing what had happened inside their own fence line. They reached the forest rendezvous at 03:38 hours, 22 minutes to spare. The truck's headlights flicked once in the agreed signal, and the driver, a young corporal who'd expected, at best, a handful of survivors, stared in disbelief as more than 100 men emerged from the tree line. There weren't enough trucks for all of them. Word was radioed back, and a second convoy arrived within the hour to complete the extraction. By dawn, the largest prisoner rescue of the European theater was already being written into after-action reports that most of the officers who read them would refuse to believe. Captain Walsh met Vincent at the assembly point, saying nothing for a long moment, simply looking at the weapon slung across the corporal's back. The medieval bow built from a truck's leaf spring, the empty quiver, the forged burned hands that had done what 3 infantry companies and an artillery barrage could not have accomplished without cost. 9 towers, Walsh finally said. 9, Vincent confirmed. Silent, silent. Walsh shook his head slowly. "I told you this was insane." "Yes, sir," Vincent said. "But it worked." Pete Caruso found Vincent an hour later, wrapped in an army blanket, drinking coffee that didn't come close to warming him after 6 hours in freezing water and mud. Neither man said much. There wasn't much that needed saying between 2 boys from Butler Street who both understood, without a word, exactly what 4 blocks of shared childhood had been worth that night. Vincent Russo would be recommended for the Distinguished Service Cross, though the full details of his weapon and method would remain classified for years, filed away as too unconventional, too strange, too far outside doctrine for the official record to fully explain. The bow itself was never duplicated by the U.S. Army. It didn't need to be. It had already done everything it was built to do.